Well, let's just get started by taking a page out of Liz Carpenter's playbook. She always said to start with a laugh. So I went right to Liz and found something that she said a few years ago that really put a smile on my face. She was addressing some University of Texas students, and she's a graduate of UT, like I am, proud grad of the University of Texas in Austin. And in 1942, she left the university with a journalism degree, and she claims with her virtue still intact. She said off she went to Washington, D.C. At that moment, she paused and said, I still have my degree. So I had to laugh at Liz's opening remarks to the students, and I hope it put a smile on your face too. But all jokes aside, Liz was a true trailblazer, and I like to call myself that. But we look to women like Liz, and some iconic Texas women actually, like Ann Richards, Molly Ivins. These women all come to mind when I think about women who opened doors for us. And I'm a proud recipient of the Liz Carpenter Award from last year. It was a great honor, and I'm still very awed by that because Liz has got some big shoes to fill, and we all can fill her shoes. But let's look at these women. And actually, when I wrote my book a few years ago, Cowgirl Power, I was looking at strong women who forged trails before us. And some of the cowgirls that I wrote about in my book were women who competed and won contests, big rodeos and Wild West shows against men. They played in a man's world and they won many times over and over. Let me give you a couple names. Perhaps you've heard of a woman named Annie Oakley. Well, Annie was the very first international female superstar from the United States. She performed all over the world, especially in Europe before kings and queens. And without a doubt, she was probably one of the best sharpshooters in the world. Now, Annie comes from an humble background. I call it humble because I'm from near Humble, Texas. We have to laugh at that. But she comes from a humble background, and she learned how to shoot to survive. As a 6-year-old little girl, she would go out and hunt on their ranch and property and kill enough food to feed the family. At one point, though, at 15, she had learned how to shoot so well that she was selling the meat in the little village near their farm and ranch. And she was making enough money that she actually paid off the family farm. Now, what a story that is. But then she parlayed that into a real career where she was literally, like I said, performing all over the world. Another woman, Sonora Carver, was an iconic character as well. And Sonora actually had a movie made about her a few years ago. Disney made a movie called Wild Hearts Can't Be Broken. And Sonora performed this incredible stunt before an awestruck crowd back in the day, back in the early 1900s, and she would literally be on horseback on a huge pier overlooking a tiny little pool of water. Off she would jump on horseback into the pool of water. And the crowd, of course, was amazed and clapped and cheered. But what they did not know is that very, very early on in her career into doing this stunt, she was off balance one day when she was on that horse, and she actually went into the water with her eyes wide open. Her retinas became detached. She became legally blind that day. But nothing stopped Sonora Carver. No one knew about it except for her husband and a few close friends. She performed the stunt for 11 more years, legally blind. She lived into her 90s. She was the kind of woman that never gave up, never said die, and is truly one of the women we can look to today, as all of us have faced some adversity, I must say, over the past year. Perhaps the theme of silver linings is what we all must learn from. And I happen to be standing in my art gallery today in the hill country of Texas, where I've spent a lot of this last year. I've been an artist for a lot of my life, but very serious artist the last few years. And fortunately, during this time of COVID and lockdown and so many adversities, I was able to sell 40 paintings this past year. In these paintings, though, is capturing some of the angst, some of the beauty, and what I call the silver linings collection. So let's talk about silver linings and what that really means to all of us, especially as we move forward. And we always think of moving forward. There's no reason to look back. It's always ahead. And so as I think back on my career and the many years that I was right at the helm of a growing advertising agency, I think about why did I devote so much of my life to the creative, to the art, to the wonderful innovation that it took to run an agency like T3, to be the largest woman-owned advertising agency in the United States. It was really all because of these women that I stood on their shoulders. And we look at the Liz Carpenters of the world and all of these women that I talk about, my mother and so many other great women who forged these trails ahead of us. Think of the adversity. Think of the setbacks. Many of them lived through the Spanish flu. Many of them lived through world wars, through losing family members, their sons, their husbands. And somehow they moved ahead and made the world a better place in any way that they could. So that's what I say to us. It's a call to action today. You know, it's really more about what are we going to do moving forward to leave this a better place and to continue to shine lights on people, and what you're doing today by honoring people, that's a good thing. We have to stop sometimes and shine the light on people who are doing things that make a difference, or who have really had a career or a lesson learned that they can share. So I applaud everyone who wins. I applaud the future winners because it's good. It's a good thing to stop and give praise. So let's give a moment to maybe some lessons learned here. I was having lunch yesterday with a very good friend of mine. She is a corporate giant. She literally was the first woman to be a chief strategy officer for a beer company. And that was never done. I mean, there's no women who've had that role and who filled those shoes. So we were talking yesterday and she said, Gay, what's it going to be like for you moving forward now? Let's kind of stop and talk about this. Both of us, both this woman and I, have spent years on the road, traveling, client meetings, customer meetings, giving speeches, me on my book tour for a year, just on the road. And then all of a sudden it stopped and we stayed home. And we had to start really thinking about what made a difference and what was really important to us. Do you know that I started doing some calculations and I realized that for most years, over the past 10 years of my life, probably 20 to 25 days a year, I was either in transit to an airport, waiting for a plane, waiting for a train, on a plane, in a car going someplace. I almost had a month of every year of my life that was devoted just to travel, just to getting from point A to B. And while I loved it, and I would not trade 1 minute for that, it's a different world we live in now. And maybe the word no is what we decided is going to have to be appropriate sometimes. Now, I'm a big person that says yes. You know, my mom always said when the brass ring comes around, you grab for it because it may never come back again. So many times I've taken risks. I've grabbed the brass ring. I've said yes. I've just taken those chances. I've moved ahead, sometimes blindly, not even knowing where I was going, just because I thought, here's an opportunity I cannot pass up. So yes is a good thing. We sometimes back away. We sometimes cower from that opportunity because it just seems too hard to do, too much to bear, too much to deal with. But say yes, grab the brass ring. But now let's talk about the other side of that equation. The other side of that equation is the word no. One of my favorite friends told me that, she said, you know, Nelson Mandela once said that no is a complete sentence. And you know what you mean by that? You know what that is? That really says that you don't have to explain. You know, I think we get these guilty feelings sometimes, and sometimes when you don't really feel like it's the right thing to do, or you don't have time, or it's not the priority at that moment. And we do have moments, and I'm going to talk about why no is good sometimes, why we have priorities at certain times and seasons of our lives. But the word no is enough because we don't have to explain sometimes why it is that we are saying no. It's just good enough. And that's all you need to say. So again, going back to my good friend, we sat there together and she said, no is going to have to come in our vocabulary a little bit more, I think, moving forward. What is our priority? How do you get the big things done? And if I have any advice or secret to share with you, it's I always tried to focus in my career as much as I could, and I'm not going to tell you that I didn't waste time frittering around doing kind of nonsensical things at times, but I was trying to focus on the big prize. What was the big goal? What did I really want to do this year? And that's where you put your time and energy. Where you put your treasure and where you put your time is who you are. So think about the big stuff you want to do and say no to the rest, because it will only distract you from getting the big things done. It's easy to do the little things. It's easy to say, yeah, I got a lot done, but let's say no to that. Let's go forward today. Let's wave the flag, as Liz Carpenter said at the end of our talk today, and say we're going to do something big this year. And the silver lining will always be that we can look back maybe 5 years, 10 years from now and say, wow, maybe this year that was a little different, a little shut down, a little depressing, a little tough, was the year we'd all been waiting for, because it was the year that we decided to make some changes that we needed to make. And always look ahead. Always do the right thing. And the right thing for you at this point in your life is to say yes to the good things and no to the things that are distracting you. So as Liz Carpenter, if she were standing here with us today, she would all make us laugh, because she knew that a sense of humor is what gets us through everything, the ups, the downs, and whatever. So keep a smile on your face. Think of these women who went before us and congratulate each other today, because you all deserve a big pat on the back. You've been through a lot and you've got a lot more to do. Thank you. So great being with you today. I appreciate the honor. I appreciate the award. Move on. Move forward.